Welcome to Aviation Careers Podcast. My name is Carl Valeri, and I'll be your host today. And today I'm speaking with someone who took a really unique approach to financing her flight training and turned it into a lucrative business. FlyGirl Detailing is a successful business started by a person passionate about aviation and is a testament to how hard work and dedication can make your dreams come true. Joining me today is Claire Maher, a successful entrepreneur and pilot. Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carl.
You know, this is really awesome. We were talking. This is probably one of the first interviews you've done, and you're obviously someone who's easy to get along with and talk to, and it's really, I'm excited about this because of the fact that what you've done is something super duper unique. And with all that said, you got to check out the Instagram page out there. The Instagram is awesome. It's FlyGirl Detailing on Instagram. Just some really cool videos, reels, and some really cool posts out there. So go check that out. We'll put a link to that down below. But first of all, Claire, what actually is FlyGirl Detailing?
Flygirl Aircraft Detailing is an aircraft detailing company that has really two missions. The first mission is to make aircraft beautiful. And it's something that I didn't enjoy at first, but now I really enjoy restoring them and really offering a luxury service. I really enjoy that. Mission number two is that we try to employ students in flight school. And what that does is it allows them to come and dip their toes in the industry. They get to meet aircraft owners, and they get really privy to, how a plane works and the parts and what you do and what you can't do, and a little bit of, proper maintenance for the paint and such. And sometimes, they'll get to meet people who will help them with their careers. They'll get to go flying in the planes they just detailed. And so
That's
those
cool.
are really the two missions of FlyGirl Aircraft Detailing.
That's really cool. I think, and it's almost like you're paying it forward. You are paying it forward to the industry, which is absolutely terrific. But you seem fairly young, so it's I'm curious as to how you actually got started in this detailing business and your aviation journey in general. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so my aviation journey started when I was 14. And I was old enough to get a job. And so my dad told me I needed to start thinking about my career. And I had a very early life crisis because I couldn't believe people did the same thing every day. And I didn't want to do that. And I thought about it for a long time, and I decided to go to culinary school. And I decided that's where I wanted to go. But our local EAA had a fly-in, and it was a Wings and Wheels Fest. It was a car show, really. So my dad dragged me, and I say dragged me on a Saturday morning to go to this fly-in. And while we were there, young Eagles, they said I could go for a free flight. So I went with some of my siblings, and right away, I was like, this is what I want to do every day. We went up, and he was like, "You're flying the airplane," and I flew the airplane. We flew over my house, and it right then it was made up. I was going to be a pilot. So that's
That's
kind
interesting. I was just going to say it's
of
amazing how that's such a seminal event to have somebody to do something so significant in your life like that, just to take you up on a flight like that. So it's just wonderful to hear. I was smiling so much when I was listening to you because I remember that's how I got my start. That's how many people did in their journey. So what did you do after that? You took that flight. Then what happened? You sparked the aviation passion.
So I went and signed up 2 weeks later, and I actually got a job at the FBO, which also owned the flight school. And I would work for 2 weeks, and then I would take one flight. I would save up enough for a flight, and then I do the flight because I was 14. I couldn't solo yet, and I,
Right.
didn't really have any goal. I just liked it, and I wanted to be able to solo when I was 16. That was my goal, and then I did. I soloed when I was 16 years old, and I was so excited. It took me 2 years, obviously, and so it felt like a huge goal. And so I kept working at that and doing my ground school, but I'm from a really, really small town in California, like teeny tiny. There's not a single stoplight. There's one high school, and I basically worked everywhere. And by the time I was 18, I was living on my own, and I wanted to take it seriously. And it was so hard to fly. I mean, I tell you, every summer there was smoke. This is Northern California. The smoke,
Uh,
the visibility would be less than 3 miles every day because of fires. And in the winter,
wow.
you had rain and snow. So it was just like a constant struggle to get my long cross country done. And so when I was 18, I got so frustrated. I had tried to get my long cross country done for 3 weeks in a row that I put in my 2 weeks at my job, gave my lease to my roommates, and I drove to Florida with my dog.
Wow, talking about going all in. So, and going to Florida, I'm assuming the intention was to find better weather and maybe cheaper flying.
The flying was way more expensive. Honestly, I was from a really small town, so the rates were actually quite well, but the weather was just so bad. Because I was 18, I really did not put a lot of thought into it, and I didn't do any research at all. I was like, oh, Florida, they always have good weather. And my dad owns a house in Arcadia, and that's like the extent of my research, pretty much.
Wow, and cool little airport there. Absolutely, go fly in there if you get a chance. Arcadia, Florida. We'll put a link up in the show notes here and actually on the screen as far as where Arcadia Airport is. I used to love to take my students there, but so now Arcadia is also somewhat of a small town, and there's a lot of opportunities to fly there. Is that where you decided to put down roots initially, as far as flying?
No, I could not really find, there's not a lot of flight schools in Arcadia. So I ended up looking at Punta Gorda, and there were 5 schools when I arrived. And I called all 5 of them, and I got a hold of one. And so by the time I got a hold of that one school, I was like, I'm coming in right now. So I showed up and I signed up for flight lessons, and I actually ended up working in trade for flight time at that school.
So what did you
Um,
do?
I was the office manager. So basically, I did most everything. I would schedule the maintenance, I would schedule the students, I would sign them up, I would run reports, I did the bookkeeping. I had already done all of these things at the first flight school I worked at in California. So I already kind of knew the gist. I had been doing it for 4 years by then. So I just did whatever needed to be done, honestly.
You know, it sounds like you have a really good work ethic and obviously are good with customers. So you obviously could probably start your own flight school. That may be something in the future. Who knows? But to make the money to actually start and finish flight lessons, I'm assuming maybe working in dispatch or front desk, whatever, customer service probably wouldn't be able to pay for all that. So then, what did you do?
So I had a lot of jobs at first. When I tell you I would serve and I would do odd jobs and I would work at the flight school and I was running all around. Um, and then one day I got a call from a mentor of mine. He was like, "Hey, I know you might need some extra money, so I'm detailing an airplane later today." And I was actually in California for a wedding. So I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not able to make it this time, but if you have another one, let me know." And then I had called with him after, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, well, I got paid $900 to do it." And I was like, "You know what I could do with $900?" Um, So at this
Wow.
point, I had the idea to start the detailing company, and I was gung ho on it. Um, and I quit all my jobs. There was like four, and I quit all of them,
Wow.
and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm starting a detailing company. I had maybe $2,000 in my bank account, And I took out a loan from my dad and a mentor for 10 grand to start this company, and I went all in right at the beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like a theme here, going all in on everything, but that's good though, because you're concentrating on one thing, especially something that you discovered was, very revenue accretive to, to your own personal finance, and something that could, sustain you. So now you took out this loan, and that must have been a little bit scary, maybe. I know it's, from your dad and all, but it must have been kind of scary. So how did you deal with those fears of getting started?
Yeah, it was scary for sure. I'd never been in debt before, not for anything. And I was definitely pretty nervous. I don't like debt. I'm not a fan of using it. It makes me nervous. I feel like I can't relax until I'm out. And I never not had a job. I liked having a job, and it was difficult being like, well, if this doesn't work out, the only person I can blame is me. Um, but I just did the math. I made a pretty comprehensive business plan. My dad helped me make it, and I went through every single step of, you know, well, I only have to sell, 6 airplanes to make X amount that I was making before. And I just did the math and I saw that it it was so profitable that you only had to succeed a little bit to like be all right. And so at the beginning, that was really just the goal.
So you were able to get to that point, and that's, by the way, that's really smart. Anybody listening, of course, if you're going to start a business, that's one of the best things to do is kind of measure it against what you're doing now. Kind of like what we do when we're coaching people that want to change careers. We kind of figure out, what is that point that you need to get to replace your current salary, and it could be a long way down the road, and what to do in between there. So now you are at that point. I'm assuming that it must have scaled. It must have started getting bigger, that you actually were able to throw off some cash to, assuming pay for flight training.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a slow moving at first. There are so many challenges that come when you've never really run your own business. I undercharged heavily. I did my first job, I did 7 airplanes, and one was a twin, and I charged $1,000. To me, I was like, $1,000, that's so much money. I ended up making like $7 an hour. And so after quite a bit of challenges and figuring out pricing and the best products and how to set up selling, and the biggest thing is word of mouth, is becoming established where people know and trust you. But now we have been able to scale it. We're about to get badged in Venice. We're working on Page Field, and then eventually Naples. And we're getting calls from all over the place. We just traveled up to Georgia to do a job. And so I'm starting to get really excited. Um, I'd say actually now we're just over a year old, and now it really starts to feel like momentum's picking up.
So now that you have this going and have the momentum, how has that affected? I'm assuming it's affected your flight training.
It has. So that's been awesome. So the reason I started it was to fund my flight training. But the first step was paying off the debt, which I did in about, I would say, 5 months. And then after that, I went and I got my private, which was ultimately my big goal, because it had just taken so long, when you start at 14. Now it's been 5 years. So that was so fantastic for me. I have a particular way of training where I just work, and I've been working, and I get all my ground school done. And I'm at that point now where I've got the money saved up and I've got all my ground school and my written done. And now my check ride for my instrument rating is January 1st. So I'll just jam until then and get it done.
Yeah, and I know you will. It's interesting you mentioned that, because just as a side note, I think it's a really good idea to concentrate your training, because that's what you've done, is you've concentrated your training, but you've done the opposite, I think, of what most people do. Most people if, especially at your age, take a loan out to start the training, to do the flight training. Not for your business, this is your flight training, but you're paying for it as you go. That must have been a real challenge for you because you're not able to do the training. And so tell me a little bit about that as far as the challenges there, as far as not taking a loan.
Yeah, I tried to get a loan, but I was 18 years old, so I had no credit and I couldn't get a cosigner. And so I had to look at it and be like, well, this is not an option. What next? And, in some ways it can be really frustrating for people that don't take out loans because you see the people with loans just fly past you. They get done so fast. And you feel like you're behind sometimes. But when you look at, I have now 165 flight hours and I paid for them all myself, and I'll never have to pay for them ever again. And it is slower, but um, you know, I also have, I've got an apartment and I've got rent and I've got insurance and a car to pay for and, all of those things. So I understand that, maybe my situation is different than other people's, but the fact that I can work and not have to take out a loan and I'm not going to pay any interest, has really been, I think, beneficial. And I think it makes me appreciate you just appreciate every flight hour. Every time you fly, you know that you worked your butt off to get in that seat. Um, and every rating feels unbelievably like so worth it.
It's not for everybody though, because a lot of folks, I think, you have to be psychologically ready for it. It's the way I did it. I mean, I worked my butt off and I actually flew at the same time. And I tell you, I missed a lot of holidays. I missed a lot of things. It was work, 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 fly, fly, fly. But at the end, I really didn't know anybody, anything, just like yourself. So there are some benefits there. But that psychological part, when you were saying that, it really resonated with me because I felt like I was getting behind, just like you felt like you were getting behind. But in reality, at the end, it's like, well, wait a minute. I've had all these experiences. I also owned a business when I was doing my training, and it was worth it. It really is worth it because someday, once you're done with all your training and you're doing the flying that you want to do commercially to make money, which is really cool that you're looking towards making money with that flying also, a true entrepreneur and that spirit, which I think is neat. The fact that you're going to go forward with this will enable you to actually maybe even start another business down the road because you already have that experience. But going back to that, as far as the funding of the flight training, did you ever look at, you said that I think an EAA chapter you went flying with, or a wings and wheels type of event, whoever sponsored that. Do you ever look at like scholarships?
I've applied for a bunch of scholarships, and one thing that I've always found really funny is I've always been told that I don't have enough aviation involvement. Which when I lived at my
Sorry to
hometown,
laugh.
I was like, I was like, I'm working at our only airport and I do everything. I was like, there's nothing else here. And I actually did become the treasurer for that EAA chapter. Um, and I believe scholarships have such an amazing, I've never gotten one, but I've seen other people. I have a friend and she got multiple. I've seen people get their writtens covered, and they are an unbelievably excellent resource, especially when you're working towards paying it off and not taking out a loan.
Yeah, absolutely it is. By the way, just for those listening, we do have that scholarships guide that we publish. It's the largest out there, well over 120 million. We stopped counting about 5 years ago, and we're up to about 1,500 pages now of scholarships. And it's only $10 for 1 year access, and we update it every month. And those are the kind of things you're talking about. You said you did multiple scholarships, and that's why I tell people always keep looking. Even though our guide is so big, you just keep flipping through it, and you can apply for one and not get it, just like you were saying, you didn't have enough involvement in aviation. Well, that's just the person that's ranking your scholarship. That's the one that's looking at it. The next year it could be somebody different. They're like, why did we refuse this person? It should be somebody else. And that's really kind of cool. And that you've done that. And I think that's awesome. And by the way, if you want a free scholarship, aviationcareerspodcast.com/free. And our sponsor of this podcast, actually, this episode is Stratus Financial. And they're the people that put together lending for students. They are in the aviation world. They've been in the aviation world. And if you're looking to help get through some of this process, just like we're talking about, there are loans out there. If you've been refused in the past, keep trying. They can help you simplify that process. They can talk to you, get on the phone with somebody and do some consulting there. Check them out at stratusfinance.com. Excuse me, not that. I'm stratus.finance. Stratus.finance is where you can find them. Anyway, I'm sorry, I digressed, but you talk about scholarships, I get kind of excited, because I have to say that is probably the most wonderful thing I've been able to see in my life, and having done this for almost 10 years now with the Scholarships Guide, is seeing people pay for multiple ratings just through scholarships alone. So hopefully you'll be doing the same here shortly with applying for more that are out there. And there's a bunch of them. About how many have you applied for, by the way? Any idea about?
For private, I believe I applied for 3. And I actually did, now that I think back, I almost got one, but one of my papers was missing because our scanner had an issue. So I
Oh,
actually called. That was that was a 99s one. That hurt. And
oof.
then for instrument, I actually just finished. I just applied for 2.
Cool. Well, good luck.
Yeah.
Let us know that if you get those or not. But we digressed on the scholarship thing. But as you can tell, I'm very passionate about scholarships. But going back to the detailing and your aviation career, this obviously has had a huge impact on your aviation career. And I'm assuming that it must be really good, no matter what you do in aviation, just for networking alone.
That actually, I would say, has been the biggest benefit that I wasn't really expecting, is I meet so many awesome people. I got to go formation flying in T-34s, and I
Cool.
detailed all 3 of the T-34s. And so, like, getting to meet people like you, and just uh, every time I meet someone who I'm detailing their plane, and then I find out who they are, I just it's so fantastic, and you really get to see more about those people when you're in their hangar and detailing their plane. You kind of get to know somebody. You can kind of tell someone's personality based on their plane after you've seen enough of
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll kind of leave it there because we don't want to get in trouble. But there's certain people whose airplanes are a bit challenging. Let's put it that way. But we got to get you up here in Lakeland to do some detailing. If somebody is interested, by the way, we got to plug your business. I think it's FlyGirl Aircraft Detailing.com. Anything else as far as you
Okay.
want to plug?
Yep, that's our website, and you can go on. We've got an Instagram, a Facebook, and a LinkedIn. That we're kind of working on growing. We've got a Google business profile, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to find us. You can give us a call, and as long as we can work with your airport authority, we can come detail your plane.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's something else that going back to what we were talking about as far as dealing with the aviation business and aviation in general. You just said airport authority. Somebody who's listening to this says, well, why do you have to deal with the airport authority?
That's one of the biggest challenges is that every airport has different rules. And sometimes it can be really difficult to get in. The airport authority is basically the government slash business that runs the airport, and they manage it. And so that you have to work with them. They'll have certain rules and regulations for insurance and workman's compensation and what you can and can't do, permits. Um, and so that's always the first step to getting in, on an airport and getting badged.
Yeah, interesting. Wow. So just not jumping out there and cleaning airplanes. There's a lot more to it. Insurance, et cetera, employees. There's all sorts of things you have to think about. Contractors. So let me ask you this. We talked a lot about detailing. How about your goals of your company moving forward? But also, how about your career? What are you looking to do as far as flying and the business?
Yeah, so for the detailing company, our goal is to kind of make this nationwide. We're starting with Florida right now. That's our goal. And I'm trying to scale it so that we can connect with aircraft owners across Florida and also with schools and the students that are trying to fund their training, also throughout Florida. And then we're kind of gradually going to go up north and then expand towards the west. And that's our goal for the company is really growth in all aspects. For myself personally in my career, I love aviation business. I thought I just wanted to be a pilot. I really did. The longer I work in business, I realize I absolutely adore it. So I've got three goals um, before I turn 30, and I'm 20 now, so I've got 10 years. I want to get my commercial, and I would really like to work Part 91 and manage aircraft. I would like to get my A&P. I want to know how airplanes tick and I would like to get a degree either in aviation management or aerospace engineering. I haven't decided.
Well, that's a lot of goals, but you have 10 years to do it, and I know you'll do it. I mean, it's just like anything else, it's just taking one step at a time. And that's kind of what you've done in the past, just looking at where you've started. And there's going to be challenges along the way, and in whatever career you're in, whatever business you're in. This has been awesome talking to you, but what would you tell somebody? Maybe it's in their career, flying, or maybe it's in their starting a business. When they do reach these challenges, how do you deal with it, and what advice would you give somebody that is up against some challenge in their life?
The challenge always passes. You just gotta weather through it. So many times something comes up and you feel like the world is ending. You just gotta remember that there's been 10 million other times that the world was ending. And the more you get used to dealing with it, the easier it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, Claire, this has been awesome. Great advice. If anybody has questions, feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. We will ship them over to Claire. As a matter of fact, go out to FlyGirl Aircraft Detailing.com. I'm sure she'd be more than willing to talk to you and get your questions answered straight from the person who's done it. But this is something that I think is really great for life in general, is starting a business and growing it. You can learn so much about all different aspects of their life, both business and people. And one thing that I think is absolutely terrific is you're really doing something, and you're doing something and paying it forward through what you're doing in your business, but also employing people, et cetera. And hats off to you for getting it started at such a young age, but expecting very many great things from you in the future. Again, Claire, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's been terrific. And again, just like Claire has done with FlyGirl Aircraft Detailing, do something every day to move forward. If you notice, what she's done is she's constantly been additive in what she's done. And that's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take just a small step maybe to move forward in your career. Maybe it's researching those scholarships we talked about, aviationcareerspodcast.com/free to get your free scholarship. Or maybe it's actually reading a book and studying, get your written exams out of the way. But make sure you take one step today to move forward in your career and in your life. And I know you will reach your goal sooner than you think. Well, folks, I really appreciate your listening or watching on YouTube. We'll talk to you next episode. Have a great day.